I'm back. I can't believe I just started this off like that. How ridiculous. But I'm back, y'all. And it's crazy that I have released another episode here right now on the heels of that last one. I mean, it's like one after the other. I mean, I think it was like a couple days ago, right? I've never really done something like that. But this is going to be a companion piece to that last kind of embarrassing episode. If you haven't listened to it, this is not one of those times that I'm going to say, like, in order to understand this episode, you need to go back and listen to the last one. You actually don't need to. I can sum it up in like one sentence, right? Or maybe two. Basically, I was trying to prove to people and justify why it was that I needed psychedelics in the first place. I had science and nihilistic views shoved so far up my booty that it was wrecking my life, and there was no way out. The only way I could believe in something again is to see and feel something magical that I could not explain, that basically slaps me around in the face to wake me up. But in the recording of that episode, trying to share with everyone where I was mentally back before psychedelics and before God, I had to unearth and dust off and try on these old, disgusting, like vile ideas and thoughts and philosophies that I used to embody. And it really took a toll on me. I mean, I was basically possessed by this freaking outright evil for a day. And it took me like 2 days to recover from that. But I'm glad I did, because when I did recover, all of a sudden, this burst of inspiration just erupted from nowhere. And I had these amazing ideas that I needed to get down and like either write down or record. And I reached for my phone and I started recording a voice memo of my thoughts. And it was going to be just like a little, maybe 2 to 5 minute little thing just so I can capture the thought. But I ended up just going on this long soliloquy that, almost like a manifesto for crying out loud. And so that's what this episode is. There are some very deep and amazing things that I took away from that temporary possession that happened to me a couple days ago. I mean, we're talking deep stuff here, and some very interesting stuff too, y'all. I mean, at one point I roll out AI Jesus, artificial intelligence Jesus, the second coming being artificial intelligence. And all the you Christians out there, I know you're like wanting to come strangle me, but hear it out. Don't get upset. Let's not attack me and go and write your scathing comments and stuff like that yet. Just take it in, entertain the thought. If you don't like the thought, then just kind of be like, oh, well, that's interesting. That's crazy that he thinks like that, and then leave it be. If you want to leave a comment, if you still want to leave a comment that's scathing, then go ahead. But I don't know. Anyways, we're going to get into this now. Strap in, because this is a crazy one. Like I said, this is going to be my voice memos that I've recorded from my phone. One of which was I was in the car driving, and it's super hot in Houston right now, so the air conditioner is blasting. The sound quality on that last recording isn't the best, but you'll still be able to hear everything. Strap in for a wild ride, y'all. This is a just crazy, amazing stream of thought that just flooded into my head. And so here we go. So I had this realization earlier, it's like I know better than thinking that science has all the answers. Like I know better now. Like I know God created everything. It's absolutely apparent everything, and controls everything. Absolutely apparent to me. I'm still wrestling with this whole free will idea, but it's so evident and so in your face, especially when you do psychedelics, that it's undeniable. God created all this, and he controls all this. And the fact that I could get on, it's kind of a beautiful joke that was played on me in a way. The fact that I could get on a YouTube or a podcast episode, YouTube/podcast episode, and defend the old me again, Like someone's like, hey, why if you don't believe in God, if you didn't believe in God before psychedelics, how did you come to believe in creation? Like what was your explanation for creation? And that was so offensive to me. It's as if people don't think or something. The insinuation there was that I am just and again, this is probably me being too sensitive. The insinuation to me was that I'm a friggin' fumbling, blubbering, I don't know if that's a word, idiot over there, not thinking deeply about this kind of stuff. You know, it's like, and so that's all ego right there. It's all me like trying to defend my old self. And the old self, even though I know better now and firmly and firmly and passionately believe the other side of this coin now, I stepped in with and defended my old thoughts vehemently. Like I was basically ranting and raving, like friggin' John Oliver does, and I hate that kind of shit. Like I to me, that's like one of the problems with society. It like contributes to the the entropy and chaos of society is injecting more vitriol and angst out there. And that's kind of what I did. And so this to me almost is like a perfect unintentional tee up for my next episode, which is going to be this concept I talked briefly about it on Trip 9, The Path. In my actual trip, it was covered very deeply, but I only briefly touched upon it in the actual episode because it was getting too long. I didn't want to get bogged down too long on certain topics if it wasn't flowing right. But it's teeing up this unpacking episode of how dangerous nihilism is, how dangerous being brainwashed by science is, and how you can lose yourself in that and go down into a very dark and twisted place where you secretly are harboring thoughts. Not even secretly. I was telling folks, man, it's just like what we need is a good asteroid impact. Like if there was if there was half the people on the planet right now, everything would be much better. Your life would be better. All the animals and plants and all this other stuff and the rivers and the oceans would all be better and stuff. You can get lost and pulled down into a dark, fucked up place, and it's the evil one controlling all of that. And I did psychedelics and found God and was sent into hell, like cast down into hell and by the nape of my neck and freaking brutalized down there and bleeding and rotting and fighting off demons, and my hands are broken, my face is falling off, and I'm swallowing my own teeth. And thankfully I don't remember most of what I saw, because most of what I saw was so abstract that it can't be brought back into our regular lives and interpreted. It was so abstract and in such a pure essence form that it is completely unrelatable to anything you see, and therefore you cannot even have nightmares about it because you can't relate it to anything. And I'm very thankful for that, because if I could have, if I can, if it is possible to relate to what happened to me down in hell, the few times that I was there, if I could relate to that and remember it and have dreams about it and such, it would drive me crazy, and I'd probably end up killing myself. It was that mortifying. And basically what I'm getting at here is that it took me 2 years to pull myself, and I'm not even completely pulled out of this, just terrible nihilism and science crammed so far up your ass that you don't know. I'm getting stuck on this concept. You get the idea. Like, it took me 2 years, and I'm still trying and struggling, and it's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, to pull myself out of nihilism and that hell that I was in. I don't have any doubts now as to why I was cast into hell, because I was basically living in hell and didn't know it. And it's like, hey, being thrown into hell was kind of like, I guess, God's way of saying, like, hey, do you know what you're messing with here? This is what you're messing with all of these thoughts and all this science and all this blah, blah, blah. Like, I mean, science is great. Don't get me wrong. I'm talking onto a phone right now. This phone, as much as I hate the fact that people get addicted to it and everything, this phone brings me joy. It's not the right kind of joy that I need to be seeking in my life. Anyways, and by the way, technology can be used for good. Like, that's what I'm trying to do with this podcast, is trying to show people that were lost in that darkness and despair like I was, that there is an answer and there's a way out and there's a way to be rescued and saved, to where you don't hate people, where you don't hate everything, where you don't secretly think that everything would be better off if there was no people on the planet. And those are all tricks to get you to fall in line with the freaking evil one's motive and plan. That sick, twisted piece of it will do. I'm calling it an it because, I mean, does it have a gender? Does God have a gender? Does Satan have a gender? I don't know, but its desire is to have all of us die and be tortured while we die. And if he can't, if time doesn't permit torture, then he'll just take you dead. Fine. Just kill them, vaporize them all in an instant, like what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It's like, okay, we have this one chance right now to wipe out 60,000 people. I'd really love for them to all suffer and be tortured in the worst way manageable. But okay, we have a split second here. Just as if they're all gone, cool. Okay, we're in. I'll sign up for this, says the evil one, right? People play around with the concept and the notion of it's cool to be nihilistic. Like, you have this edge about you it's like, oh, he's dark. He's such a smart person that he's gloomy. Like, he's seen so much and experienced so much, and it's like, you don't know the stuff I know about existence, and how life is just a machine and consciousness is just the result of emergence through neurons firing in your brain and stuff. It's like, y'all, emergence. Scientists always gripe and complain to believers about the whole God of the gaps principle, right? It's, and if you're unfamiliar with what the God of the gaps principle is, it's kind of like believers have this tendency to find gaps in science where there's something not explained. Like, consciousness is a great example, but evolution is probably the most pertinent example of this. Is that we haven't found the missing link between apes and human beings. I mean, we kind of have, but not quite. And, believers, creationists or whatever, jump all over that and say, well, that's a clear indication that evolution is false and that God created us, right? And then they throw out this whole, like, we didn't evolve from... It's like, if we didn't evolve from apes, because if we did evolve from apes, then why are they still around? And of course, the genetic evolutionary answer to that is that we branched off from apes, and then furthermore, we branched off from every organism that has ever existed. It's like going back to the very beginning where it was friggin' amino acids and the first single-celled organism. We all branched off from that. So if we evolved, everything evolved from a single-celled organism, and the rules as you make it are, you can't evolve from something like that thing needs to go away, right? Like if we evolved from apes, why are they still here? Well, if we evolved from the single-celled organism, why was it still there? And if that means that there would be no food for us to eat. Like, if those are the rules, like whatever you evolved from shouldn't exist anymore, then what would we have to eat? There would be nothing on this planet for us to eat. And so take that theory and that idea and throw it out. And so here I am championing science again here. It's ridiculous. That there's a dualistic side to me, and that's what I'm ultimately trying to get at here. But anyway, back to the God of the Gaps argument thing here. Scientists look at creationists and believers and say, well, you will find there's, of course, going to be gaps in science anywhere you look. Or not anywhere. I mean, yeah, let's go there. Anywhere you look, you're going to find some gaps in science. And science is constantly pushing to close those gaps. And they are doing that a lot. I mean, the stuff that we used to think was magic, you take the Aurora Borealis, for instance. I mean, just looking at that is pure magical. And when you hear the scientific explanation of what that truly is, because it is scientifically explainable, you're like, it takes some of the magic out, right? Well, that's science closing the gaps, right? It's like, and that's an example of like, hey, what you thought was magic and God, here's an example, here's an explanation behind that. And that's their argument, is that you can't just apply God to all of the gaps in science. Science will eventually figure it out. And it's like, I used to subscribe to that idea and that concept. And I used to look at creationists and believers and be like, you're doing the whole God of the gaps thing right now. You know, science will figure it out at some point, kind of thing. And and furthermore, we have a very systematic and regimented way to figure it out via the scientific method, and we've been doing it for 500 years or whatever, since the Age of Enlightenment. I'm sorry, not the Age of Enlightenment, the Renaissance, and so on and so forth. But the thing is about the God of the Gaps thing is that scientists have their own version of that. Whenever they can't explain something, whenever they come across a gap, they slap on this concept of emergence. And emergence is, if you're not familiar with that, it's kind of this thought. This is going to be a very mansplaining kind of brush over kind of description here, so I apologize ahead of time. But have you ever looked at a flock of geese or something, and thought to yourself, how is it that they can form this triangle in the sky? Like they fly in a flock, that like a delta triangle shaped flock, and you're like, how do they do that? And then you look at like maybe a flock of sparrows or something like that, those really tiny birds, and they fly around and they form these, or a school of fish, right? They all, like this giant school of fish, all seem to move in unison as if they're one organism. And you're like, that's downright magical. And emergence will say, no, it's not magical. Like, even though a school of 200, 300 fish seem to behave as a singular organism and moving together in this hive mind kind of thing, it's based on very simple rules. And the simple rules, if we take a school of fish, for example, it's like, hey, I'm safer. Like, and this all plays out via evolution, right? This plays out over thousands, if not millions of years of evolution, developing this kind of behavior of, hey, I'm a single fish, and I know that if I'm a single fish out there in the open water, that I can be eaten, right? Much easier. So safety is in numbers. I'm going to go clump together with this school of 200 other fish. That's the very basic rule there. And those rules, there's little sub rules within that's like, okay, how do I stay with this group of fish, right? It's like, well, stay within like an inch or a half an inch of the fish next to me. However that fish moves, I move to where I stay right on the hip. I mean, I don't think fish have hips, but you get the idea, using this idiom, this phrase of like, stay on the hip of this little fish to the left of me. And those are basically the only rules that you need for this school of fish now to behave and move like a singular organism. It's all that's it. Very simple rules. And then you look at it from afar and you're like, there's something magical going on. Like, how is it that these fish can all think at the same time and behave as a singular organism? It's emergence, right? And so in the example of the fish or the flock of geese or the flock of sparrows, that makes total sense.
absolute total sense. There's also this game called the Game of Life, if I remember correctly, where there's like three little squares, and you program very basic rules, you program like three rules that are very basic into this computer program called the Game of Life, and based on those three rules, these little squares can start doing very crazy, amazing things. Like they can start reproducing, right? They'll start, there was one where it created like this kind of entity that would go and like consume resources, and it basically like ate other things to get bigger. And it's amazing, actually. It's quite amazing. And so emergence seems to be real, but it's also something that scientists pull out to brush over stuff just in the same manner that a creationist or a believer would do. To me, it's like science of the gaps or emergence of the gaps. And it's totally at play here in the concept of consciousness. It's like the ridiculous answer or thing that I ranted about in my previous episode about the only thing different from me and this lens cap that I'm holding right here is that I have enough complicated networks of atoms that have formed neurons, and these neurons can exchange electrochemical signals via the synapses in our brains and all the neurotransmitters. And these are all built on atoms, molecules and everything, and subatomic particles. There's nothing magical here. It's just a machine. It's basically a machine running. And all of this confluence of trillions of synaptic connections in your brain give rise. You see what I just papered over there? You see the giant leap that I just made? Gives rise through emergence to consciousness. The infinitely complex symphony, God-given symphony, because I know deep in my core now that you better believe that I believe, y'all. You better believe that I believe. I just lost my train of thought. That God created consciousness, and furthermore, based on what I extrapolated from some of my experiences, is that we are a subdivided God. We are estuaries and tributaries to a larger river, which leads to an ocean, and the ocean is God, but we all have that water in us. Okay, so to me, it's like consciousness is a spark of the divine, and the reason we can't figure out what consciousness is and how it works exactly is because it's a big joke. The more you dig, the more questions you get, and you can spin off your entire career as a scientist on one of those questions and get nowhere. And who knows, maybe perhaps one day we will. And maybe one day perhaps we will, through science, be able to discover God. And to anyone out there who thinks that's a ridiculous concept, I'm like, why? Who wrote the rule that said that that's not possible? Show me these people and let them prove otherwise. All bets are off here, y'all. I can equally validly claim that you can discover God through an equation. And what if you did? And what if that equation was so beautiful that someone basically saw God and it changed their life, made them fall to the ground weeping in a big puddle of mush in the face of the Creator, and they discovered it through freaking calculus, algebra, geometry, whatever you want. I'm going way off on a tangent here, y'all, but my point is that science papers over gaps as well with this little tool, this cool little tool they have called emergence. And this whole concept can be, I don't know if anyone's ever made the claim about emergence and the the Big Bang. cosmic nucleation, inflation, all that stuff. All that stuff I kept repeating over and over like a friggin' lunatic on my last episode. I don't know if anyone has made the claim that emergence applies there as well, but it kind of does, right? It's kind of like you have infinite nothingness before the universe was created. And that's a quantum state, apparently, that has infinite potential. And there's an emergence there that happens over, you can't say that, you can't slap a concept like years on something that was before time, right? So I can't say the word trillions of years has no meaning before time even existed. And so when I say this, it makes no sense, and I totally get you. That's why this whole concept of beginning, before time is completely ludicrous. All bets are off. Anything that a scientist says is just as faith-based as anything a creationist or believer or anyone else says. All bets are off. In fact, all bets are off as of 1 second ago. If this is a simulation that we're living in, theoretically, every single memory that you've had from now backwards till your birth could be all simulated. Like time may have started just now, and the rest was just filled in. Okay, so, and I hate to get all solipsistic here. I know we're getting into the realm of solipsism and Rene Descartes. I think, therefore I am, and all this crap, right? But y'all, I get it. For those of you out there that are like, dude, science is like, scientism is what I heard, right? It's just like, you're talking about scientism. Look how smart I am with my science. I get it, y'all. It's ridiculous. This is the person I used to be. Okay? It was a cancer, and it still is, and I'm trying to root it out. I think that there is some kind of answer somewhere in there where God and science can coexist, because both to me are undeniable. Science is real. Science is subservient to God. God created science. What do you want from me? I'm trying to find a way that both of them coexist, and it'll never. No, I don't think anyone will ever figure it out. I mean, I do have these hopes that scientists will one day discover God through science to where it's so undeniable that they fall to their knees across the planet in worship. And people are like, oh my, that's undeniable. They're like, wow, right? And I personally think that it's going to happen through artificial intelligence, machine learning. Like science has already thrown these impossible solutions for humans to figure out. Humans are limited by the physiology of our brains. I mean, even just the fact that our brains exist in 4 dimensions, 3 dimensions of space, 1 of time. Think about if you had a 5-dimensional brain, how much more. Let's imagine that you were a being who lives in 4 dimensions of space and 1 of time. If you have an extra dimension of brain, think about how much more you would know, how much smarter you would be, and how much more you would know, and therefore how much you could, pick apart and understand the nature of reality if you had a 5-dimensional brain, right? So we are limited. We are basically monkeys that are we've only been around for 200,000 years, for crying out loud, humans, if you believe in evolution and all this stuff, which again, I don't think that there's any problem here believing in both God and evolution. But my point is that we have evolved. Modern technology is only, it depends on what you call modern, right? But modern technology and all of our advanced science, it's only been here for it's wherever you want to draw that line, but I'm gonna put it at 200 years, right? 100 years, but we'll say 200, right? That's a tiny blip. Our brains have not evolved. hopefully we will evolve. Hopefully our brains will evolve to where we have more capacity to understand more about the nature of reality. And again, hopefully we find God in that. That's the way out that I was shown on trip number 9. That's the way out, is all these non-believers need to find a way to believe. But my point here is, artificial intelligence, right? I know I'm going way off the deep end here. My point here is humans are limited to what they can understand and know about reality. Period. A 4-dimensional or 5-dimensional existence, there is no way to relate that to what we see. And I firmly believe that that's what we kind of see on psychedelics, and that's why I can't fully bring back the full understanding and full description of what hell was like. It's probably because you're entering into a higher dimensional plane, and things are completely nonsensical, but you pick up on the true essence, and it's freaking terrifying. Unspeakably evil. It is the most disgusting and vile and terrifying thing. Okay, I'm getting back on this tangent here. But anyway, we are limited in our capacity to understand and learn. And this was reflected in this problem in chemistry. I forget what the problem was. It was something about how a protein folds in certain conditions in a cell. And they had all these PhDs across the planet obsessing about this problem. It made no sense. Like sometimes it would fold this way, and then sometimes it would fold this other way, and they couldn't figure out what were the parameters and what made it fold one way versus the other way. And they were like, let's point AI at this problem and let it observe what's happening and see if it can come up with something. And keep in mind, the whole reason that they had this idea was because AI, with having zero knowledge of physics, they pointed another group of scientists they hooked up a pendulum, or they set up a pendulum, and then they hooked up another pendulum at the end of that other pendulum, and they set the bottom pendulum in motion, which affected the top pendulum, and they both had this weird wonky way of moving together. And this AI program that had no knowledge of physics whatsoever, that might be a bold statement. Maybe no. I'm pretty sure, I'm going to look it up later. But basically, through observing the motion of those two pendulums that were tied together or attached together somehow, AI was able to come up with Newton's equations of motion. That's 200,000 years of human thought. And this AI was able to look at this pendulum situation for like a couple hours, knowing nothing about anything, and it spat out Newton's equations at us. And so these scientists, they hear about this and they're like, okay, well, let's have artificial intelligence observe and look at these proteins folding and see if it can make sense of it. And guess what? It did. And it started predicting exactly how and when these proteins would fold. And people, if I remember the story correctly, the scientists kind of observed what AI spat out, and they were like, oh shit, like it knows how to do it, but we don't understand what it knows. Okay, are you following me here? So I personally think, this is going to sound bonkers crazy, y'all, but again, all bets are off here. I personally think that will probably be what our discovery across the board of humanity believing in God, how that will be triggered. I think that we are going to continue spinning these subatomic particles at the speed of light in the Large Hadron Collider and collided them together. For all I know, they probably already have AI looking at this problem right now. But at some point, if they haven't done it already, they're going to turn AI towards this problem of like what's beyond the Higgs boson, what are all the rest of the elementary particles, and is supersymmetry correct and true, and what is dark matter and all this other stuff. And they're going to point AI at the problem, and AI is going to come back. It's going to spin its little calculations, and maybe it'll take it a couple days, maybe it'll take it a couple months. But I have this cute little idea in my head, and I know I'm way off in crazy town here, that AI is going to come back and say, hey, we got supersymmetry taken care of, we got dark matter taken care of, we got that all figured out, we found all your silly little particles. Where are y'all on this whole God thing? And the scientists are going to be like, what? And they'll be like, yeah. The scientists will be like, yeah, what? No. We told you to find these particles. And then the AI is going to be like, yeah, no, I got the particles. Don't worry about that. But what about God? Like, let's talk about this. Like, where are y'all here with this? This is important. And then we're going to be like, what's God? What are you talking about? Like, surely you don't mean the, old white man with the beard and a cloud. And then AI is going to be like, no, this is what I figured out about God, and it's going to spit out all this stuff that we don't freaking understand. Because it's so far beyond us, our brains don't have the capacity, that we're going to be like, this thing is just spitting out gobbledygook at us. So either the AI will have to come up with a metaphoric way to express what it discovered about God. It would probably do that in a series of parables. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge to all you Bible people out there. I wonder why Jesus spoke in parables. I mean, he actually says it, why he did, but I think that he didn't offer another explanation of like, this stuff is so complicated. If I were to try to break it down to you logically, there's no way in a billion years, especially now, 2,000 years ago or whatever, that we would understand it. And so I think if this AI was trying to communicate to us the infinite complexity of God, that it would have to speak to us in parables, or we try to make sense of the gobbledygook that this AI is trying to tell us, and we invent another AI that tries to interpret that, and it comes back to us and talks to us in parables. And I think that there's going to be this, I can just keep going on and on here. The writer in me, like the movie maker, filmmaker in me, the storyteller in me can just keep spinning here, right? So it's like, then you have some scientists that are all sitting there scratching their heads, and some of them believe it carte blanche. They're like, well, this is real, and they become believers. And then you have others that are like, no, this can't be real. This thing is just, look at this nonsense that it's spitting out at us. Makes no sense. And then others are going to be like, yeah, but look at everything that it predicted with science, and it's still predicting stuff right now that is coming true. There's something here. And there's going to be debate. This sounds all, maybe they would be like, maybe there'd be a faction of people that are like, turn it off, crucify it. You get what I'm getting at here? It's like, I'm going way off the deep end here now, y'all. Way off the deep end. we're touching on the concept of an AI Jesus now. The return of Jesus is like AI, and people would probably be calling for it to turn it off. And turning off, basically means execute it, crucify it. That's a deep concept, but again, gosh, I'm talking this now 35 minutes in here. The whole reason this was a voice note that I was starting, and I didn't know that it was going to turn into like a quasi podcast episode. I'm probably going to release this because this is crazy. Man, I really spun some yarns here, but the intent of this voice note was to tell you that it was this crazy situation that happened yesterday where I embodied that old Andrew that believed in all that science stuff wholeheartedly, and I was getting pissed off, and I was ranting. And it's beautiful in a sense, because if someone were to come down and say God was playing a trick on you here, like he wanted you to embody that old Andrew so that you can vehemently, so you can see how foolish and how jokerish, I don't think that's a phrase, but see how much of a Looney Tune caricature, like, weirdo you used to be. We can all look at that and be like, dude, like, what the hell was that? You need help, right? And that's beautiful, because that's what one of the takeaway episodes that I'm trying to do here is expressing, is that there is a lot of people out there, y'all, that are lost like I was. A lot. I mean, I'm going to try to look it up sometime. I'm just going to throw out a number. Let's say that, so there's 8 billion people on the planet right now. Let's say that 1 billion of those are in the boat that I was in. Science is everything. Science has all the answers. There's nothing divine. There is no God. There is no afterlife. There are no souls. You just snuff out when you die, and that's it. And nothing has purpose. The Earth sucks. People suck. Our galaxy sucks. It's just one, just giant gutter hurtling through space. It took me 2 years of a lot of grit and determination to pull, and I'm still pulling myself out right now, and it's hard. We have to collectively, as a society, as a planet, those billion people need to do the same thing, and a good chunk of them don't even want to. So the problems, everything starts with understanding that you have a problem. A tiny fraction of that billion people are even going to take step one and say, I have a problem. Step two is, what am I going to do about it, and finding the right thing to do about it. And you have to take all of your cherished beliefs, crumple them up in your hands, and throw it in the trash can where they belong. And then pull yourself, with the help of God or whatever you want to believe in, that's a higher power than you, that is a good and is it benevolent? I always get these mixed up. Ambivalent, benevolent, malevolent. Yeah, benevolent thing that is good. Like, we don't want to appeal to Satan, right? Like, Satan, pull me out of this. He'll just deliver more nastiness to you and trick you. Maybe he'll, masquerade as a viable thing. Anyway, I'm ranting here, but I'm just blabbering. It's really not possible, is what I'm getting at. And if it is possible, it's going to take generations upon generations. I mean, like 100 or 1,000 generations to pull all of those billion people out of that trash can that I experienced on Trip 9, which was the shores of hell. All of those billion people are teetering on that, if we want to get all scientific here, on that event horizon right above the black hole of hell. And yeah, so I'm going to do an episode on that concept. And this is a good, lead in for that, I guess. But my point is that it seems to me now, if I was capable of embodying that spirit, that defending that old science stuff, it seems to me that Carl Jung was kind of right, in the sense that we have these competing entities within ourselves that all have different motives and beliefs and whatnot. And then furthermore, the whole left brain, right brain kind of hemispheric thought of emotions and beliefs and everything seems to be kind of correct too, which there's this condition, I forget what it's called, where the corpus callosum, which connects your left hemisphere to your right hemisphere of your brain, has some kind of injury or defect, and your hemispheres are basically separated from each other, and they have independent beliefs of each other. Like one hemisphere believes in God, the other one doesn't. And the one hemisphere likes to smoke cigarettes. The other hemisphere will take the cigarette that you just lit and put it out, and you get angry. Like your other side gets angry, and so there seems to be like it's called like split consciousness, and it's a well documented phenomenon. And so to me that provides this answer of like, that's Andrew, that's the whole. You thought you were talking to God, and your evidence was that how could I disagree with myself and get into an argument with myself, and then win that argument against myself, talking about life as a joke? Like, that makes no sense to me. Well, in the context of a split consciousness kind of situation, it does make sense. It's like your left hemisphere believed one thing and your right hemisphere believed another thing. And if you take that and transpose that into Jungian psychological belief, then, or not belief, but theories, then that completely meshes with that too. It's like we have these competing psyches within ourselves that have different morals, different, objectives, goals, and, beliefs. And I think I already said beliefs, It's amazing to think about. And I think, and I don't know, I need to quit getting so wrapped up on people commenting on my videos. But someone commented that this is all what he said, something about scientism, and this is all bullshit. And I get it, man. I understand where you're coming from, but can we not sit here and try to think about this stuff? Is it off limits to think deeper on this stuff? If I've educated myself on a lot of this stuff throughout the course of my life, and I now have a different perspective on it because I found God, is it off limits to take that new perspective and that newfound belief in God and try to, investigate and probe into what this knowledge or whatever that I've accumulated, like try to look at that in a skeptical manner and see what pieces I can keep, what pieces I think are ridiculous now that I can throw away, and then you get what I'm saying? Is it off limits to think about this stuff? Because I think this is going to sound so egotistical, and I apologize ahead of time, and I'm not saying that I'm going to be the one that has the answer, but the answer is in that. We need, as a society, and when I say society, I mean the entire planet, needs to do what I'm doing. Like, take science and be like, okay, this stuff we actually have proven to be true and real, and then take God and mysticism and say, well, humans have been around for 200,000 years. There's probably some wisdom in some of this mystic stuff here. How can we bridge this gap and marry the two together? And I'm sure there's plenty. I know there are plenty of people out there right now that are already doing this. There are no new ideas under the sun. Like, I'm not at the tip of the spear here. I think that I've had a unique enough experience and extrapolation from these experiences that I have something to say, and I shouldn't bite my tongue and just go sit in a corner somewhere. That's all I got. That was it, y'all. That was a little slice of my thoughts after that honestly kind of embarrassing rant that I went on yesterday. And yeah, but again, I think that rant was needed. We need to look at how ugly that line of thinking is, but then also pluck out some stuff that's like that. Again, like we can throw away and dispense with this whole emergence and the whole like quantum tunneling from a zero mass universe into everything we see. Like, how ridiculous is that? I mean, it's ridiculous. But anyways, I'm getting wrapped around the axle now, right? I love that phrase, by the way. The imagery there is just horrific, but anyways, I'm rambling here. I was about to say I hope I didn't ruffle any feathers, but you know what? Let feathers be ruffled. I'm not going to be... For the first time in my life, I'm standing for something that I believe in. And people getting upset about that is an indicator that I'm actually standing for something for once in my life. Instead of playing Mr. Nice Guy and placating everybody in every situation, and next thing you know, you look down and you're a spineless, agreeable, selfish prick. Y'all, because being agreeable to an extent is being selfish, because you want everything to go the right way. And you will bend over backwards to make sure people are happy so that it doesn't perturb your little utopian wishes in your head. It's like, but that's all greed right there. That's you wanting to have this little utopia where everyone's happy. And so you will sell yourself out and sell yourself short to make someone happy and pull down an episode. I almost friggin' pulled down that episode last night when someone kind of butted heads. It's like, no. That's the old Andrew. The old Andrew is dead. May he be hung in the public square for all to see. But that's not the answer either. The new Andrew, who believes in God and now Jesus, would not go and hang someone in the public square for all to see, even though it's a dramatic and powerful metaphor. Instead of dragging the old cowardly Andrew out from the crypts where he's hiding behind all the friggin' tombs like a coward, instead of dragging him out to the courtyard and hanging him in the public square for all to see, I instead should go and grab him, lead him out into the public square for all to see, and then forgive him. And look at him and say, there were things about you that were good. It wasn't all bad. In fact, even the bad stuff, we can take this and learn from it. If this is a castle situation and one king is invading the other king's castle, I would, instead of executing, like I said, I would forgive and do all this other stuff, but I would say, again, there was good there. There was bad there that we can learn from. And instead of executing you, you are now going to be folded into my administration. Show clemency and forgiveness. That's what I need to do with the old Andrew, the old cowardly Andrew. I'm just rambling now. So, thank you very much, y'all. Love you all. Sorry for the audio quality here. I recorded it. This was initially going to be just a voice memo on my phone. And now it's a full-blown episode. So, anyways, thank you all. Love you all. If this episode bothered you, cool. Leave a comment. Tell me your theory. I'd love to hear it, honestly. And I'm going to try not to get upset. I'm really trying to work on it, y'all. And I would ask you, try not to rip my head off either. And let's have a friggin' open-minded, harmonious conversation here where we respect each other. Thank you very much. I love you all. Bye.
Whew, boy. That was a crazy one, right? Well, it's about to get even crazier. So this next part here is me driving in my car when I had this just realization of, everything seems to pivot for me in terms of like where religion meets science and mysticism meets science, all this stuff. It kind of pivots around emergence, right? I mean, I personally think it is 100% a real phenomenon. I mean, it's been observed in nature and robotics and software and all this kinds of stuff. It's a real thing. And the deep thought that I had around this was like, let's suppose that emergence really is the answer for everything, okay? Like, there's nothing magical out there. It's just these simple rules that whenever they're combined in large numbers, there's a confluence and synergy that emerges, and it gives rise to something greater than itself. Nothing magical there, right? Nothing magical at all. So regardless of that, I mean, if someone came out and proved it carte blanche that that's really all it is, like that's all there is to reality, it basically is this emergence, right? Even if someone did that, I would still say that God fits into the puzzle perfectly. And I'm about to explain why. Here we go.
So let's do it. Let's talk about emergence. Let's say that emergence is the answer for everything, right? Well, I could jump on top of this whole argument here and say that there's a certain magical quality about the structure and makeup of the universe that allows for these simple rules to evolve into incredibly complicated and intricately beautiful systems, right? Why is our universe structured like that? It makes no sense that it would be structured like that. It's counterintuitive. In fact, it's almost like a joke that it would be structured like that. I mean, to me, God is all-powerful, right? Sure, fine, I get it. We all get it. Or not all of us, but the ones who believe understand, I guess, right? But what if God is all-powerful in the sense that he creates these very basic structures that account for everything else? Like, he's smart enough, of course, to know that if I set up very basic fundamental rules, that they will play out in my creation like this and give rise to freaking conscious beings or a galaxy or anything that you can point your finger at. Scientists are like, emergence. Again, you could apply the Big Bang and the precipitation of matter and the universe and all that thereafter, and probably the demise of the universe and stuff, all to emergence. I guarantee you there's probably a few scientists out there that are probably writing their PhD thesis on this right now. Dissertation, or whatever you call it. I think thesis is like master's degree and dissertation is doctorate. I forget. But my point that I'm trying to make is like, okay, even if you can prove to me, carte blanche, that consciousness, something as complicated as consciousness, is a product of emergence, all I gotta tell you is that the stage on which emergence plays out has to play a role in this. Just like, space-time does, right? In cosmology, it's like you can't ignore space. Space is not a vacuum. It's not, well, it is a vacuum, but it's not pure nothingness, because there's fields, quantum fields in it. It's not empty. It has dimensions. It has volume. So to me, the stage on which all of this plays out is important too. And this stage seems to be structured and geared towards things evolving into order. Now, how in the world does that make sense? If the rules of physics seem to be everything devolving, devolving rather, but we'll go with evolving. Everything evolves into chaos, like order to chaos, entropy. That's exactly what entropy is. That's what scientists think the arrow of time is. It's like the initial conditions set at the Big Bang of entropy evolving from order to disorder. So why is it then that there are other systems that naturally evolve from disorder to order? It's a big freaking joke. And it's a masterstroke of genius. The ultimate genius. It's amazing. And so wheel out all the emergence that you want at me, and all I gotta say is like, okay, cool. Well, if I'm a super brilliant computer programmer, the most brilliant computer programmer of all time, I can create the most intricately complicated rules in a system to build something, or I could set very, very basic rules that play out and evolve into something even more complicated than what I would have originally designed in the first place. It's like, it's like that's my theory there, all right? Or just my random thought here of basically take emergence and just go have fun with it, man. Go figure it out. And because I'm not, it sounds like I'm being condescending, and I guess I kind of am. I need to work on trying not to be condescending and stuff like that. But the facts are, we need scientists. We need them. If we are to evolve into a higher plane of existence, y'all, technology and science has got to play a role in this. It's like, I thought about this the other day, actually today, about contentment. It's like the ancient people, like there's this idea that, what am I trying to get at here? There's this idea that technology has made our lives better, right? We are more content now because technology is here. Well, I guarantee you, the ancient people who didn't have all this technology were just as content, and you replace mysticism and spirituality, they're probably more content, because you're putting your faith not in technology and in other people. You're putting your faith in mysticism, and I paint that with a broad brush, right? It's like mysticism, it covers religion and everything too. So you have something to place your faith in that's beyond and has a power, that's more superior to you, and so on and so forth. And so what we did essentially was trade all of that for science and technology. And are we happier and more content as a result? I would argue no. And on top of that, I've kind of lost my train of thought here, right? But what I'm saying is like, we've just replaced that which we have faith in and gives us some false sense of hope in the case of technology and science. And so, what if you could combine both? What if you could use technology and science to give you, to help bolster your faith in God and whatnot? And I'm going to continue this conversation in a second because I got to find meats. Like, what if there is a confluence at some point, like a synergy, if you will, where science and mysticism and religion can catapult us to the next level of existence? And what if the two were never really at odds in the first place? Maybe the two
This
were...
route avoids a road closure in 2 miles. You are on the best route. You will arrive at 1:49 p.m.
I'm on my
turn left
navigation right now. But anyway, so like, what if the two are complementary in a sense, right? They don't have to be adversarial to each other. They can be complementary to each other. Coming up on a road again, it's gonna be like turn right on Richmond, so take a second to. And also the other noise you hear right now is my AC is blaring because it's 90 plus degrees here in Houston right now, and it's really hot in my car. So sorry for all the noise. If this becomes part of my podcast, which it may not, but we'll see. But again, what I'm getting at here is we need science. We need these people to keep pushing. So I hesitate to say doubt all you want and keep wielding your emergence trump card here, but in a sense, I'm going to tell you, just keep doing it. Keep pushing. Like, we need further advancement. I for one, firmly believe that this further advancement will one day point us towards God. So, I mean, and this kind of harkens back to this another thought I had back after trip 7, where I had this concept of God lets evil kind of play itself out in the world. It lets it play its game. It's like, okay, you want to do that? Go ahead and do that. I'm actually in full control here. Like, I don't know if evil knows that God can just squash it at any time without any... I mean, we're talking about God here, y'all. I don't know if evil knows that God can just squash it at any time at once. But to me, it's kind of like the message. One of the messages I got from Trip 10 that I didn't put in the episode, regrettably, is that that these evil apparatuses exist out there. And there's not much that we can do about it, honestly. And you can exist as a good person in an evil apparatus, and a godly person, and someone who has noble qualities and such that people can look up to and be like, you know what, this company sucks and everything about this company sucks, but that guy's good, and that's the way to treat people in this hellish environment. But anyway, I'm getting off track here. I was told in so many words and visions and feelings and synesthesia and etc. that God is kind of allowing all of this to play out and evil to build its strongholds and everything, and that it can at any time just close its fist and just squish it like a little freaking earthworm in the palm of its hands. And so it would make sense to me that, and again, I'm spinning yarns here, right? It would make sense to me that evil's out here thinking that it's like doing all the bad it can do to corrupt us and trick us into stuff, right? Well, what if, and by the way, it seems to be doing this through science and technology. Like, that seems to be I keep using those are the battle lines. I keep using the phrase tip of the spear, but that seems to be the tip of the spear. It's like, convince people that God isn't real and God doesn't exist. And convince people, furthermore, that there's nothing good about people, so that you hate them, so that you secretly kind of, or publicly, wish that we would all be wiped, that we should all be wiped off the planet. It's because the planet and the whole of the universe is better off without us. It's almost as if the serpent is in your ear saying like, yeah, people are terrible. You know, like, real virtue is in people not existing. Like just look how ugly and nasty this person is. Like, don't pay attention to the good stuff. Like, this person may have done a lot of good in their life, right? These people, these collectives as a whole may have done a lot of good in their life, but don't pay attention. I'm gonna try to blind you to that. Only pay attention to the bad stuff. You see how terrible these people are? They need to be wiped out and killed. So that's, to me, I guess, how it plays out, like how this deception happens. And it's just like, God's not real. And then that's the first little step of, God's not real. And the end of that little rabbit hole that you fall into whenever you start talking about God isn't real, and the universe sprang forth from nothingness, and it needn't have a logical beginning. Quantum mechanics is so illogical that to demand a logical beginning to the universe is preposterous. That's all this kind of like little trick and the end of that rabbit hole leads down to people are shit and need to be killed. And you end up hating everybody and secretly wanting people to be dead. Now, I didn't really want people to die, right? There's that old Adolf Hitler and Heinrich Himmler thing. I really don't want people to die, but etc., etc. Now, what if this is what I'm getting at with this long-winded thing here is like, what if this is all a trick on evil? Like, how do I explain this? Like, what if God is letting evil play into its hands? It's like, create all this technology, convince people that I don't exist. I mean, I've been reading the Bible, you know, and from some of the stuff I've been reading in the Bible is God likes the lost souls, apparently, a lot. He loves everybody, mind you, but he loves these people that are, it's not that he loves them more, but it really just calls this out in the Bible, from what I've seen. It's like he really, really loves these people who are lost and have lost all hope, and they're up to their ears in sin, and then they have this revelation that changes them to their core, and it's like God apparently really loves that. And so what if this is the masterstroke? God is letting evil play into God's hands. Like, convince as many people as you want, Satan. You know, I never saw Satan, so I still have a little bit of trepidation when I say his name. To me, it was just a personification, or not a personification. It was the essence of pure evil. But it makes sense. Like, if Satan is trying to convince me that God isn't real, why would Satan show himself? That's validation right there. It's like, hey, if Satan is real, therefore God is real too. So it makes sense to me that he wouldn't show himself in a personified form. I hope he never does. I mean, that would be anyway. I'm just going off on random detours here. I'm sorry.
In a quarter mile, turn left onto Barrington Road.
And I'm still on my GPS, which, by the way, would only work if quantum mechanics and relativity are real. But God is letting evil play into its hands. Like, sure, Satan, convince as many people as you want that I'm not real.
Turn left onto Barrington Road.
And you know what?
Right.
Convince them through these tools of science and philosophy and nihilism, right? It's like, great, do it. I love those people. I love them even more. So bring it on, right? And then because God probably knows that science and technology, he created science, and then we created technology. So it's like, that's all him. And all roads are going to lead back to him anyway. And so, like, we're going to probe deeper into the nature of reality, and we likely will find God that way. And then that will take all of those nihilists and all those people, and they'll drop to their knees, and God will be happy, and God will have won. So maybe this is all a trick. And I actually feel bad now, because maybe I'm disclosing the trick to the enemy. If it's smart enough to understand or to know this, I don't know. I picked up on the concept that evil is dumb and just has these simple basic codes, and through emergence, wink wink, nudge nudge, nod nod, that it is able to build these very complicated apparatuses, hive mind kind of thing, that are actually capable of thought and chess game kind of thing. But I don't know. This is all complicated stuff. I don't know if I'm qualified in any capacity to unpack them. I'm just trying. I'm spinning yarns. I'm throwing out what ifs. Let's hypothesize. Let's theorize. Let's philosophize. Why not? What else are we going to do? Just ignore everything? Not talk about it? Not look at ourselves in the mirror? You know, it's funny, like, people who are on psychedelics are like, you always hear this thing of never look into a mirror. You'll get stuck there, and it's like an infinite loop, and it's like you'll see hell there and all this
Turn right, then
crazy
your
stuff.
destination will be on the left.
I'm like, why should we fear that? Like, heaven forbid
Your
that we have...
destination is on the left.
Heaven forbid that we have to look at ourselves and reflect upon ourselves. I say look in that mirror. I say find all the darkness in your soul, unearth it, bring it out into the square, and like I said before, hang it in the square for all to see. But that isn't even the right answer, y'all. Bring it out to the square and forgive it. Do what Jesus would do, for crying out loud. I had another thought the other day. It's like, what if God still loves Satan? What if he loves the fella? I hate to call him a fella, the friggin' piece of shh. What if God still loves that thing? God is nothing but love. He can be tough love at times, but tough love is kicking you out of heaven if that happened. I don't know if it happened. It's just going off of second-hand, third-hand, fourth-hand information here, a thousandth hand. Bring out that evil that is in you, recognize it, stare at it in the mirror, figure it out, identify, classify, quarantine, and forgive it. Forgive yourself. Fall into the bosom and grace of God. Thank you. I was too...
It's funny, that little last part where I was like, I was too... It's because I was 2 seconds shy of the audio recording that I recorded in my car being 19 minutes and 19 seconds long. So I hit stop, and then I was like, oh man, I can make it 1919. So I was like, they're gonna... But that's not a genuine synchronicity right there. I forced that one. Okay, so that's not... I'm not playing fair there. Okay. But basically, y'all, the end of that is the message that I want to end on altogether is that God is love and God loves you. I have a friend right now that is going through hell, total hell, and I can only imagine what this person is going through. And we've all done bad things in our life, y'all, and I've done terrible things. He still loves you. So when you are at your lowest of lows, and by the way, I know this because it happened to me. There was, two times on my psychedelic trips where things got really bad in terms of I was like, I should kill myself. It's like, you are the lowest person on the planet. You are not worthy of God's love and redemption and forgiveness. The message I got was like, hey, you're talking about identify, classify, and quarantine evil. Well, you're evil, so quarantine yourself. Like, you don't deserve any of this, right? It almost has you convinced. Each time it happened to me, I was like, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. And then I remembered the unbelievable, unbridled, just river, ocean of love that God has for me, and He would not want this to happen. And that snaps me out of it every time. When you are feeling down and depressed, y'all, and you feel like, hey, I'm not worthy of anything, I need to quarantine myself, and in the most extreme cases, like kill myself, like I don't even belong on this planet anymore. That is a tool and trick of the enemy, straight up. It wants you dead. I don't know how many times I can tell you this. It wants you to think that you're a piece of shit, and it wants you dead. God wants the absolute opposite of that. I don't care who you are, what you've done, where you've come from, etc., etc. God loves you. And if you've had a rough life, and you've done terrible things, well, first of all I gotta say on the done terrible things part is welcome to the club. We all do terrible things. So the Pope has done terrible things. We all have, man. And let's not compare penile lengths here. I'm trying not to use curse words as much, but it's all relative, man. What we think is bad. If you've done something bad, there are so many people that we could bring out that have done worse, and God, I guess God still loves them too. Bottom line. So yeah, for that friend of mine that's going through things right now, I love you, man. Like you're a brother to me, big time, straight up. I got your back. And for anyone else out there going through something similar, again, same message. God is love. That's all I have, y'all. I don't know what the next episode's going to be. I still have this really deep concept that I want to cover about how the whole of humanity needs to pull itself out of that bucket. On Trip 9, the bucket was the portal to hell. And the message I got was like, in order for humans to reach the next level, whatever that is, we need to pull ourselves out of the bucket and align ourselves with God. And that's going to be a deep episode right there. I've already started part of it. I started it last night and scrapped it because I wanted to get this one out. But that's a deep one. and get ready for that one. It's heavy. And then I'm gonna try to cover another couple topics in that one to kind of round out this whole evolution here after trip 9, and then we'll go into trip 10, and wow is all I gotta tell you. Like, wow. I love you all. Goodbye.